Hello, let's get started. But first things first. To program in Python, I use an IDE or an editor called PyCharm. You can use whatever IDE you're more comfortable with. I like PyCharm because I feel it's really good and makes me really productive. And if you're a student, you can just go to the JetBrains website and download PyCharm and even get a full license because you're a student. If you're not a student, there's a free edition that you can use, and this free edition definitely works for this course. Okay? If you open PyCharm, it looks like this, what you see on my screen, basically the welcome screen. It shows, some projects that I have. But what we're going to do is to create a new project. So create a new project, it's a pure Python project. We need to give it a location, so where it's gonna store in my machine. So there is this PyCharm projects folder in my machine, and I'm gonna just create a new one that I'm gonna call Pac-Man game, for example. You can leave with the default options here, it doesn't really matter for us right now. It's nice if it creates a new environment using virtualenv. You don't need to understand this right now. We discuss this later, okay? So I'm gonna create a project. It may take a few seconds because then PyCharm is creating everything, it's initializing everything. So all we gotta do is to wait a little bit. Great. So if you're new to PyCharm, this is what it looks like. It basically shows our folder structure on the left, and then the source code will happen here in the big panel. So let's see, you see that our Pac-Man game folder is basically empty. It has this venv folder, but we don't care about it right now. And what we're going to do is to create a file that we will start to program our game. So you can either use your mouse, so File, New, or you can use the keyboard shortcut that you can see here. So I'm using a Mac, so this symbol says Command, and whenever you see this, if you're using a Windows machine, you can just replace this by the Control key. Okay, so Control N or Command N, depending on where you are. So Command N in my case. New, what do I want to create new? Right, it's a Python file. New Python file, what's the name of the file? I'm gonna put pacman, right? So pacman.py, and perfect. So we have our first file. This is where we're gonna write most of our games. Let me even increase the font a bit. So I went to the preferences panel. I'll look for font. And let me make it a bit bigger, just, for the video purposes. So maybe it gets better, maybe a bit even bigger. Let's see. So you can even watch this in the cell phone. So let's get started. How do I go about it? So whenever application or whatever application you build, there will always be at least two responsibilities there. One is to show stuff to the user, right? You want to show, like in our case, the Pac-Man game to the user, which is like the map, and that, so that the user can take an action, right? So this is one thing, everything related to user interface. And in our case, we have a second thing, which is the logic of the game itself, right? We have to teach the program how the Pac-Man walks, how the ghosts walk, what a wall is, etc. So we always have these two responsibilities, okay? And what I'm going to try to do here as much as possible is to separate them. So we will program the user interface completely separated from the game logic. And that will just make things much easier for us, not only to develop, but also to test and make sure that the program works. Okay, so, and we're going to go little by little, right? Because if we don't have user interface, it might be hard to see what we are doing. So we're going to do little by little, but let's start with, to me, is the most important thing or decision we have to make when developing this Pac-Man game, right? And I think to me, the big decision is how to model the map. So everything in a Pac-Man game happens within a map, right? And then once you have a map, all you need to do is to manipulate this map so that things, and I quote and unquote, right, happen. For example, moving the Pac-Man might be, just moving the Pac-Man from one position in the map to the other position in the map. That's what's happening behind the scenes, right? So let's model the map in the simplest way possible, just as an array of arrays or a matrix. So just to give you a quick idea of what I'm talking about this. So we're going to have this map variable, and this map variable will be an array, right? So I use the brackets over here to represent that I'm going to create an array. And this array will be just a bunch of strings, and each string will be one row in our map. So let's do something like this. So let's now we start to define what the symbols inside of this map represent. Then we have walls. So we have, like the, walls are walls. But let's have two characters for the walls just to make it look more elegant. You're going to see. So let's suppose the pipe symbol and the dash symbol are walls, okay? And we can have something like this, right? So the first row of the map is only walls. Then the second row of the map, if we copy the map I showed you in the first video, so there was a ghost here. So let's say, we have to start with a wall, of course. Then we have a ghost. Then we have empty space. Let's represent this by dots. So empty spaces are spaces where our characters can walk in the map. And then let's say we have another wall here, then maybe two other spaces, then another ghost, then another empty space, then a wall. So you got the spirit, right? So each character here represents one dot or one something in the map. And depending on the char or the letter that I have here, this represents something different. So dashes and pipes are just walls. G's are ghosts, right? What else do we have in a Pac-Man game? We have pills. So the Pac-Man can eat pills. So let's represent pills by P. So I'm going to put two pills in a row here. Then let's say another ghost. And then let's represent our Pac-Man. And Pac-Man is P, but P represents pills already. So we have to go for something else. Let's use the @ symbol to represent the Pac-Man, okay? Then let's say a wall, another wall, then you got the spirit, right? Oops. I don't know. Yeah, something like this. And then, of course, the precise map doesn't really matter, right? And that's the beauty of it. So we're going to make this in a way that later you can just create more maps and bigger maps, and different maps and more complex maps. As long as they all follow this convention that we have here, we are quite fine, right? So let's write down our conventions, right? So we know that the @ symbol represents our hero, so our Pac-Man. G represents ghosts. P represents pills. What else? Dots represent empty spaces where, the characters can walk. What else do we have? This and this, right? They represent walls. So this is then the map representation that we want to have. Yeah? Perfect. So it seems simple, but that's actually a very big step here. We just defined the data structure that will hold the most important part of the game, right? And what I want you to see from now on is that what we're going to do is basically manipulate this data structure. So the game starts and we have this map. And then if the person tells the Pac-Man to walk to the left, all we need to do is to get the Pac-Man that is here and put it here. But of course, the place where the Pac-Man was is not the Pac-Man anymore. It has to be an empty space again. So we moved Pac-Man to the left. If we tell Pac-Man to go down, we are going to check, can I go down? Yes, I can go down. So I'm going to put the Pac-Man down and I'm going to replace these two dots. If I try to go down again, can I go down? Oops, no, I can't because that's a wall. So that's an illegal movement. So that's not allowed, and I'm not going to let then the Pac-Man go there. So this is basically what we're going to do now. Implement pieces of functions that will manipulate this matrix. And those functions know precisely what is allowed to do in the game and what is not allowed to do in the game. Okay? So let me put the Pac-Man anywhere, like here. And that is where I'm gonna end this video. See you in the next one.